town in South Africa. Guys, thank you very much. I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes so to introduce yourself, all of you, in more detail. We'll start with the ladies, and we will start with Ouafa from Tunisia. So we go north and south. So Ouafa, please tell us a bit more about yourself, your background, of course, your business, the institution you represent, and the work you've been doing.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to join this very exciting panel. Thank you for organizing the whole Africa in Color event. So my name is Ouafa Belgacem, and I am the founder of Culture Funding Watch, or CFW, which is Tunisia-based but with scope on the MENA and Africa region. We work on support to resource mobilization and investment for cultural creative sectors in the region. So we work on access to information, influencing donor, and working on innovative financial tools and strategies. You can find, we publish, we sort of identify those funding mechanisms and try also to push so that there is investment-friendly and sustainable investment-friendly ecosystems in the areas we work. That's it.
Great stuff. Thank you for the introduction. So, Ojoma, would you like to
Hi. Yeah, hi everyone again. So I do represent quite a number of organizations actually, but I work for the British Council. I am the regional director for the Arts and Creative Economy programs. I also sit on a UNESCO global panel of experts that support the 2005 Convention on the Diversity of Cultural Expressions, which is very much about the creative economy. And then I sit on the board of an organization called the Africa Tech and Creative Group, which is a group of African creative industry and tech sector professionals that are really keen to ensure that the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement actually works for the whole of the continent and works for businesses on the continent. In all of these roles, I'm really focused on supporting the growth of the creative economy, whether it's through ecosystem support, whether it's through skills, whether it's through access to seed financing, or access to research, insight, or policy. So I do a range of things in that regard. Really pleased to be here, and good to see you, Ouafa. We were on a panel a few weeks ago together.
It's great to see you ladies already know each other. Okay, we're going to follow with Trésor, and then we'll end with Julio. So Trésor, would you like to introduce yourself, of course, your work so far, and of course your background as well?
Très bien. En tout cas, déjà, dans un premier temps, merci à Africa in Color pour cette invitation et cette possibilité d'échanger aujourd'hui. Je vais être un des rares parmi vous à échanger en français. Je crois que dans le panel, on a beaucoup de francophones et Martial sera un traducteur agile. Super. Donc aujourd'hui, je me présente en tant que Trésor, justement fondateur et créateur de AFT, African Financial Tribe, qui est la première marketplace qui permet de connecter exclusivement les investisseurs de la diaspora ou du continent avec les porteurs de projets et investisseurs du continent. L'objectif était très simple. Dans mon parcours personnel, je suis entrepreneur depuis un peu moins d'une vingtaine d'années et au développement commercial international de différentes structures comme Hewlett Packard ou Publicis, en l'occurrence, que vous pouvez connaître dans le domaine justement de la communication. Et le constat a été très simple. Il manque aujourd'hui cruellement de simplicité pour pouvoir apporter les capitaux là où on en a besoin. Ça m'a permis de monter une première société majeure qui s'appelle Simple, qui connecte les philanthropes de partout dans le monde avec les personnes qui sont en besoin en Afrique et sur le continent américain, en tout cas sur le pays américain, sur les États-Unis. Et justement, African Financial Tribe, qui permet de connecter justement tous ces investisseurs africains, alors des fonds ou des particuliers, vers des porteurs de projets qui ont besoin justement de visibilité pour permettre au continent de voir émerger de nouveaux champions, dont l'industrie créative, où on aura l'occasion d'en parler, pour permettre d'avancer.
Fantastique. Merci beaucoup, Mr. Trésor, pour l'introduction en français. Merci beaucoup. Julio.
Hi, Martial. Hi, everyone. I don't know if I have to speak in French or in English.
Whatever you feel more comfortable with.
I'm Julio Mupemba. I work at INP, Investisseurs et Partenaires, which is an investment firm. We have many offices in Africa, in West Africa, in Central Africa, and in Madagascar. We invest in companies. We invest in with equity. We found companies. We found African entrepreneurs. Myself, I lead one of our latest program. It's called EIP80 for EAP Accélération Technologie. With this program, we are trying to help startups, to help startups in those countries where there's not that much fund money available for them. But we're convinced that as needs to be funded, and this is my goal every day to try to find great startups and help them. We also add, we don't only fund them, we add technical assist to really help them to scale and to be able to continue and to have a real impact in Africa. Thank you. We don't hear you, Martial.
But I tend to have this habit that whenever we have Zoom calls here in the UK, so whenever people talking, you switch off your mic, then you get to put on your mic on, so there's no difference. So I tend to have this habit of switching off my mic. So yeah, and of course we're gonna follow Leo. Leo, would you like to introduce yourself to our viewers and the rest of the panel?
Hi everyone, again, good afternoon, and again, thanks for having me today. I'm Leo Boisnier, I'm the ecosystem manager at Africarena. So Africarena, in a nutshell, we are an African tech accelerator based in Cape Town, South Africa. And what we do is we do the bridge between corporates, entrepreneurs, and investors. So we are mainly focused on tech startups. So today I will be able to give you some perspective from this side and hopefully see how we can maybe increase or do the bridge between investors and entrepreneurs in the creative industry. So I've been in Cape Town for 4 years now, and I have a previous experience in venture capital. That's me in a nutshell.
Great stuff. Thank you, Leo. Thank you for the brief introduction. All right, gentlemen and ladies, we're going to jump straight into it. Of course, the first question is, why the creative industries? Of course, why have you chosen to focus on such industry, and what drives you or your company to be involved with these industries, particularly in Africa? So starting from north to south, starting with the lady first, I will start with Ouafa once again to hear from your thought on the question.
Thank you. What motivated me is actually, I mean, I have a very, very bizarre career when you look at it. I am originally an archaeologist, and but I had all my career in finance. And when I started working, my first mission work in archaeology in Egypt, I then realized that the problem of resources and financing the sector is going to be crucial in the coming years. And it's at that moment I decided to become a professional fundraiser. At that time, that was only fundraising. Now the profession has progressed. Now we talk about resources mobilization, because it mixes the tools from investment to grants to TA, etc. And that's what motivated me, because from the start, I come from the cultural creative sector. It's something that's very close to my heart, and something I choose to be in my career, but I have been forced to move because at that time there were no learning opportunities like that when you come from the global south. So I had to work as a finance, funding, find my way around that. Beside the fact that the personal sensitivity, that I decided to be an archaeologist when I was 9 years old. So for me, it was like, yeah, that's the cultural creative sector. And but later on, when you start operate, you realize the importance of our sector, not only in terms of economic development of the societies we live in. It's all about social, psychological well-being, and everything comes back to the cultural creative sector, and more specifically the artist sector, for which I'm much more close to. So I came to the sector because I deeply believe should be the backbone of any human development strategy, vision we have for our societies.
Great stuff. Oh, kind of lost you there for a second. Great stuff. Thank you very much. So, Ojoma, and I would love to hear about you and, of course, about the work from the British Council. So, tell me.
Thank you. Like Ouafa, I've come to this from sort of outside of the creative industries. My background is in the tech sector, actually. And so I've worked in both hardware and software roles in the tech sector in my early career. And I've really come to the creative industries, I think, because of an early realization that there's a lot of talent, certainly in Nigeria, but in other parts of Africa, but there's lots of support that's required for that talent to actually materialize into benefits, whether that's economic or social or whatever kind of benefits. And so I came to it as a sort of outsider to bring some of what I knew from other sectors into trying to contribute in any way I could to supporting the growth of the sector. And it feels at the moment like I've come full circle, because we're talking about digital now and tech in creative industries. So it feels like I finally found my place in that intersection. But exactly, found my niche. But in terms of the British Council, creative industries, because again, the British Council, certainly from a sort of UK perspective, where the creative industries are massive, as share of GDP, the UK probably has the biggest creative economy in the world, not in absolute terms. I mean specifically as share of GDP. And when we think about the sort of export potential for creative industries in the UK, we're talking about something like £8 million an hour that the creative industries generate for the UK economy. And so as the British Council, where we're trying to connect the rest of the world with ideas, experiences, knowledge, opportunities from the UK, it was really obvious that this is an area where the UK has comparative advantage. So how about we share that experience with the rest of the world? And Africa is a key area for that, because Africa as well, we have a comparative advantage in that regard, in that over time, not just in terms of our historical, cultural richness and diversity, but over time, the creative industries have started to really emerge as a key opportunity for both economic growth, but also other kinds of social outcomes in this region. And so our work is very much around how do we bring those two experiences together for mutual benefit. So our program is very much around training, as I've mentioned. We've launched a new sort of business incubation program for creative economies. And so we're really focused on the early stage and saying, how can we support individual entrepreneurs? How can we support institutions such that people can get set on that pathway to either future investment or business growth, or something that allows them earn more of a living from this economy. We're also interested in the social elements, because we also recognize that the art and creativity and cultural expression are such a powerful tool for young people to express themselves, to ensure that their voices are heard. And so we're also really interested in just showing the art and engaging with the work and supporting people to express themselves. So that's really the interest of the British Council. And we continue to work in across the continent with partners from the continent, as well as partners from the UK and elsewhere, to support the work that we do in this area.
Great stuff. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I'm going to jump to my dear français. Trésor, est-ce que tu pourrais nous parler un peu plus par rapport à votre marketplace, Financial Tribe, et of course son attitude en regard du creative sector? I think Trésor.
Très bien. Alors, chez AFT, on parle beaucoup de champions et on parle beaucoup de rêves, et c'est ce qui permet justement, et c'est ce qui donne du sens à notre fonction. Il y a quelques années, j'ai beaucoup fréquenté toutes les tables d'investisseurs, tous les événements internationaux autour des startups, et on a pu voir cette dynamique qui aujourd'hui drive vraiment l'économie mondiale. Et on s'est rendu compte que finalement, on avait pléthore d'investisseurs de la diaspora ou du continent qui recherchaient activement des champions qui allaient pouvoir représenter le continent africain au monde et être capable justement de remettre au centre de notre culture l'africanité, et être capable non pas de rêver noir, parce qu'on n'exclut personne, mais de rêver africain. C'est pour ça que miser sur les industries créatives, c'est devenu quelque chose d'assez évident. Au regard, par exemple, de la comparaison avec l'économie française, où l'industrie créative ou les industries créatives, on peut appeler au pluriel, ont généré l'année dernière presque 92 milliards d'euros. On sait très bien qu'en side effect, on a eu à peu près 12 à 13 milliards d'euros qui ont été générés sur des frais annexes, sur la consommation alimentaire, sur les frais de déplacement et de logistique pour mettre en place des festivals, des théâtres, tout ce qui va être lié à l'assemblage ou la mise en place de cinéma et autres. Donc, attirer des investisseurs pour miser sur l'industrie créative qui est la plus finalement difficile à associer à l'aspect de profit, c'est devenu une mission prioritaire pour nous qui sommes de métiers commerciaux. À la base, la structure de base des FT, c'est un cabinet qui s'appelle Bconsulting et on fait environ 300 commerciaux, des machines à chiffres, comme on aime s'appeler. Voilà. Et être capable de mettre justement notre savoir-faire au profit justement de ces artistes africains qui ont besoin d'être boostés, d'être drivés pour pouvoir permettre au nouveau Nollywood d'arriver. Nollywood qui est un exemple de succès, qui aujourd'hui rapporte 3% du PIB nigérian, par exemple, avec 500 à 800 millions de dollars à l'année. C'est génial. Mais on a besoin de Nollywood camerounais, on a besoin de Nollywood tunisien, on a besoin d'autres Orions et notre vision, c'est ça. On a clairement identifié tout le potentiel à la fois prolifique mais aussi bénéfique pour le continent et c'est ce qui plaît à nos investisseurs.
Merci beaucoup, merci, c'est parfait parce que là, évidemment, l'industrie créative, comme tu le dis, est très très grande et très importante d'ailleurs pour la France. Évidemment, si on peut reproduire ça sur le continent africain, ça serait un succès. Évidemment, et la question est là. Comment rendons-on cette industrie un peu plus profitable?
Oui, je peux rajouter, Martial, c'est exactement cette phrase que tu viens de dire qui arrive à convaincre un investisseur sur deux à la fin d'une conversation ou d'un pitch, c'est de dire qu'il se rêve qu'on est capable de matérialiser dans un si petit pays qui est la France, peut-être grand par ce qu'il a représenté dans l'histoire, mais aujourd'hui c'est un petit pays de 66 millions d'habitants, si on le reproduit sur un continent, et c'est ce que j'aime dans Africa Color, c'est que nous sommes là pour parler d'un continent, on ne parle pas d'un pays. On a fini de faire rêver un investisseur, on peut aller sur du concret.
Exactement. Anyway, on va revenir sur cette question. Comment peut-on rendre cette vision réalité? So I'm gonna jump to Julio. Julio, so do tell me how, évidemment, how you guys are managing and working with the creative industry, and of course, from your perspective and your company perspective, Julio.
Okay, thank you. I'd like first to say, basically, I've big interest in this industry because as a young man, I really enjoy playing video games, watching movies, going to the theater, not much, but more music show and everything. And my first, I do invest personally in startups, and my first investment was in a studio game based in Cameroon. It's called Kiro. Yes, exactly. It was my first personal investment, and it was kind of logic to invest in Kiro. And to come back to INP, we INP started to think about the cultural and creative industry a few years ago, and wanted to, as you know, at INP we invest in companies, but before that, we didn't have any information about this industry, and we wanted to get to know more about how this industry works. And in 2019, with Africarena, via some fund from AFD, Agence Française de Développement, we INP we created Afrique Creative, and at Afrique Creative, the goal is to help to help. There is a cohort of nine companies in Morocco, Uganda, Senegal, and Burkina. And the goal is to help them, because it's very it's not really young companies, but it's company in this industry, and they don't have all the thinking that they need to have if they want to raise money from
Exactly. I
investor.
think that's probably a problem that we all face about when it comes to the creative industry. This industry is not as structured, especially business industry. They're not structured as business into other type of industry. For example, tech, which Leo you be more familiar with, especially when it comes to the creative. Software industry does fall into the creative industry. So Leo, what has been your experience so far? Of course, you deal with a lot of software and SaaS company.
Yeah, thanks Marcel for this question. So my contribution is going to be relatively short on this point. So just before, like Ojoma before, when she was on the tech side, so I'm still currently on the tech side. So I'm not completely working in the creative sector. But I believe that there is some form of overlapping between the tech industry and the creative industry. So some stakeholders from the tech industry may benefit from the creative industry and vice versa. So I'm thinking, for example, of distribution, exposition and visibility, but also, of course, investment. And I will be happy to develop on this point later on. So what I can tell you from my Africarena experience is that we do see some startups from the creative sector within our programs. So basically what we do every year, except for this year obviously because of coronavirus, but what we do every year is we bring around 100 entrepreneurs from all over Africa to our summit in Cape Town, where those entrepreneurs are pitching in front of different corporates and investors. And every year we have entrepreneurs from the creative industry. So I can tell you more about a partnership we had with Air France last year, where actually all of the startups that we connected with the staff from Air France were from the creative industry and were actually video game studios. So we made that connection. So they all met other tech entrepreneurs from all over the continent, and we made that connection with the entrepreneurs from Egypt, so the entrepreneurs that were running the game studio, with the top executive from Air France. And actually, it has led to investment from Air France, form of contract versus a contract, where actually the studios developed some in-flight entertainment content for Air France. So we do try to do programs and have entrepreneurs from the creative sector. I can tell you that we saw more entrepreneurs from that industry last year compared to 2017 and 2018. So we can see a growth, we can see a rise. However, in our programs and in the tech space in general, it's more the exception than the norm, actually. So there's lots to do.
Great stuff, fantastic. In terms of what you mentioned, also what Ojoma mentioned in terms of the bridge between creative and tech. Actually here in the UK, which is what Ojoma was saying, the UK has a huge industry when it comes to creative, and of course they do recognize that kind of hybrid industry, what they call creative tech or create tech, is called, which is where actually creative industry meet technology. We have, for example, the case of immersive technology, such as 3D technology. So video gaming even could be some of the video game when you start having immersive with 3D and 4D space, that could be considered what we call create tech. And this is where the world is evolving. Of course, this is where I believe the opportunities are also are. So talking about that point, I would like to jump on to my next point, my next question. I want you guys to give me your thoughts on. What do you think are the main challenges, of course, that you've encountered when it comes to driving and bringing investment into those creative companies that you have come across? So once again, if we start again with North and South, actually this time I'd like to Ojoma to jump first because she does have this British perspective. Then I will follow up with Ouafa. So Ojoma, what's been the challenges that you come across when it comes to driving investment into creative businesses in Africa?
So I would say that there are sort of three categories of challenges. On the sort of demand side, demand for investment side, which is on the side of the sector itself, and then the supply side, so supply of investment, which is on the sort of investor side. And then I think the third set of challenges is around what I would call contextual challenges, which is around the sort of operating environments that creative industries have to work in. And on the demand side, which is on the creative industry side, I think there's a number of issues. One is, and you've already talked about it a little bit, one is about the way that many of the firms and businesses in the industry are structured. Often they're quite informal, maybe they're not registered as a business, doing it as a, and there isn't a real legal entity that can attract investment. So I think that's a real issue, is there's that informality to the businesses in the sector. I think there's an issue on the demand side as well in relation to the ecosystem of support. And that's something I think that the tech industry has really done well, is focus on the individual entrepreneur, but also look at the whole sort of ecosystem of support around the entrepreneur, such that whether it's the legal advice or the business modeling experience or the, whatever additional both financial and non-financial players in the ecosystem, make sure that they're all lined up. So I think there's a problem that the ecosystem in many of our contexts in Africa are not well developed. And so the support that the individual entrepreneurs are getting is not as robust as it should be. And then obviously there's many more. I'm picking the sort of top ones. On the supply side, I think there's a real lack of understanding with investors on how the creative industries work. In my experience, I've seen that there's a tendency to focus on the sort of outputs, because it's such a visual industry. Like, you make a film, so people watch a film, or you make a game and people see the game. I think that investors have tended to not dig deep into what actually makes the value chain. And so when they're saying, oh, we don't really understand how it works, they're saying we don't really understand how the products work. Whereas there's a whole system behind it. So I think there's real poor investor education. I think on the supply side as well, an additional thing I find is that the instruments that are developed by investors for funding the creative industries are often not fit for purpose. And so they're taking maybe instruments that have come from their more traditional sectors, whether it's agriculture or manufacturing or whatever, or sometimes even tech, which is closer, but it's not identical, right? So I think there's a problem with the investment instruments not being fit for purpose. And then the final set of challenges is around context. And within the context, I think there's a number of things. There's regulatory issues. So regulatory, whether that's from IP support, which you were talking about in the previous panel, and that just lack of evidence of ROI on IP or lack of protection of IP. But I think there's also issues around licensing. Many of it is linked to the sort of wider SME context, where in many countries you have multiple taxation, you have really burdensome, regulatory requirements that stifle the growth. I think there's also issues around freedom of expression, frankly, on this continent, because at the end of the day, the creative industries are based on arts and creativity and expression. And so if you're stifling that, then it has impact. So those are just some of the challenges that I think we have.
Great stuff. Freedom of expression, that was a very interesting point that you mentioned. And of course, most of what we should be aware of, the kind of political environment in Africa. We always want to make sure now as business people that are interested in business, we steer away from the political conflict that might arise. Ouafa, has this been also your experience while investing or trying to drive investment through the continent or on project based on the continent? Have you found the same challenges on your way, or have you had a different experience?
All what has been mentioned by Ojoma was we have experienced that. So I will just add to what she said. We have experienced the same issue about still a project or a product-based investment approach rather than to an ecosystem and a different supply chain, because all those are businesses and they create value. I find it very hard, because one of our work as CFW is to connect those culture creative, whether entrepreneurs or organizations, to the resources they need. And we find it very hard for us, on our work, to connect, for example, if there is someone doing the same work, someone working on IP, for example, as a service around that, we find it very hard to present that as a worthy investment. They just still, okay, well, I'm going to invest. What are you doing? I don't know, producing a film or having an album. It's really hard to, let's say, sell those projects or enterprises to the investors. But that also is sometimes fueled by two other elements. As a sector, we are not, maybe in different countries yet, equally considered as industries. We're still perceived as, let's say, sponsorship, mécénat, how to say, the mécénat. It's like, you know, it's a social thing we're doing, and we are really not yet perceived as industries. And that brings me to the issue of data about our sector. We can't, I think the panel's members could confirm that, those who work on really connecting investors, we can't pitch you, because that's how my work is also to pitch these entrepreneurs to the investor. I can't pitch you, I can't support you without data. I'm not credible when I go to try to convince a bank to develop a specific budget line or specific credit or a financial guarantee as a tool tested somewhere else and here, while I'm talking in general. I can't even, for example, take the case of Tunisia, I can't even give reliable number of how much enterprises are there in culture creative enterprises, how much we contribute in a national PIB. So that's a serious issue towards bringing investment or interesting investors. That there is also another problem is now from the, let's say, the supply sector side, like the entrepreneurs. We suffer a lot in many countries in the continent from most of our culture creative business. But actually, it depends on the sector. Huh? When we say culture creative industry, it's really a large spectrum. But some sectors suffer a lot from what we call not being investment ready. The investment readiness of those enterprises, it's really, we are very far. They've got nice ideas, nice projects they're starting, but they are not like ready to be presented, ready to convince. Because back to the question of lack of investing in the whole value chain. Because making an enterprise ready to investment needs some people skilled who knows how to do that. And those support, let's say, I call them in French, les fonctions support. Well, support functions on that are really one of the most difficult to find support and investment in the sector. If I take CFW, it takes years. Up to now, people are not really clear about what we do. And they don't even consider us as an enterprise. I mean, I keep repeating, we are an enterprise. Oh yeah, CFW is an NGO, you're helping people. No, we're an enterprise, and even with my clients. So we still not perceive it like that. What else? Yeah, that is the main issue. So the lack of data, we need really to make an effort all together to try to collect data. And this is what we did and created the Cultural Creative Enterprises Index, which is a new product that we put online. It's the CCEindex.com. It's open source. We have developed it so any given country in the world can use it to generate statistics instantaneously. They can still upload it, you can play, because it's interactive. You can even play with the statistics, and you can upload, use them, and it's whatever, for research, for advocacy, for pitching. And so we're trying to develop this soon because it's useful to everybody. That's, yeah, very briefly, that's what I can add to what Ojoma has already said.
Great stuff, great stuff. Thank you very much, Ouafa. So this is a question next to Trésor. Trésor, comment arrivez-vous à résoudre ces problèmes? Donc, Ouafa et Ojoma ont parlé. Comment arrivez-vous à vraiment vendre ces compagnies à vos investisseurs sur votre plateforme? Ces compagnies qui ont des problèmes de structuration et en même temps des problèmes d'écosystème. Donc, il est très difficile de reconnaître la valeur de la compagnie. Mais comment arrivez-vous à vendre ces compagnies à vos investisseurs sur votre plateforme?
Alors la réponse est dans la dénomination finalement de la structure EFT. On parle de tribu. On assume finalement la manière dont la culture africaine est structurée de base. Et je vais répondre très simplement à cette question. On choisit nos investisseurs en les prenant parce qu'ils sont des investisseurs rêveurs et pragmatiques. C'est-à-dire qu'au-delà finalement de leur volonté de faire du profit, il y a aussi cette volonté de croire dans le continent et de comprendre le continent tel qu'il est aujourd'hui. Et ça, c'est très difficile dans le monde justement de l'investissement qu'on représente tous aujourd'hui en termes de panel. C'est que nous avons des codes, nous savons comment détecter un champion, nous savons où nous devons appuyer, où nous devons finalement tailler un peu plus le diamant pour qu'il gagne en termes de carat. Mais quand on parle Afrique, on parle de structure inexistante, on parle de structure absente, on parle de besoin de créer la structure pour valoriser le champion qu'on a dans la main. Je prends un exemple très clair et vous permettre de comprendre ce que c'est un investisseur. Aujourd'hui, on est dans un boom finalement du tissu wax et imprimé wax, comme on devrait l'appeler, qui est finalement l'un de nos plus grands faire valoir à l'international de notre culture africaine. Et pourtant, on sait très bien que c'est un tissu qui n'est pas africain. C'est un tissu qui a été conçu pour être vendu en Afrique. On le sait. Pour autant, finalement, on va s'accrocher à la force qu'a ce tissu en termes de traction et chercher à travailler finalement sur des nouveaux designs, des nouveaux éléments pour le customiser. Aujourd'hui, soucis de nos investisseurs ont été séduits par ce pitch-là. Il existe des tissus qui sont conçus, tissés et faits en Afrique par des gens qui ont été capables de se débrouiller. Et la débrouille, ça devrait être quelque chose qui devrait être dans tous les slogans, dans tous les hymnes et sur tous les drapeaux africains. Nous sommes des débrouillards. Avec peu, on fait beaucoup. Avec pas beaucoup, on fait mieux que les autres. Et ça, on doit en être fier. Parce qu'aujourd'hui, c'est ce qui est le plus vendeur pour un investisseur. Être capable de lui dire, donnez-moi 1 000 $, j'en fais 100 000, tout le monde vient. Et c'est ce qu'on dit à nos investisseurs. Je reviens à l'exemple. Nous avons des tisserands de tissus qui sont mieux que la wax, qui fonctionnent bien. Ces tisserands-là vendent. Ils ont été capables de se mettre en partenariat avec des créateurs qui aujourd'hui remplissent des boutiques à Dakar, à Abidjan et qui vendent au quotidien. Ils ont besoin qu'on les aide à industrialiser. C'est là où je me tourne vers mon ami Léo de la tech, où là, finalement, la tech, l'industrie, rejoint l'industrie créative. Ces gens-là ont besoin d'industrialisation de leurs process pour pouvoir les optimiser et réussir à arriver sur les marchés à des prix plus compétitifs que la wax de qualité ou que le concurrent copieur de wax chinoise. Voilà comment on arrive à vendre un projet avec du rêve, mais en même temps du pragmatisme à un investisseur qui veut croire en l'Afrique, mais qui globalement n'y connaît pas grand-chose.
Fantastique, fantastique. Je vais revenir à Léo sur cette question de comment associer le créatif à la technologie pour pouvoir créer plus de valeur sur les compagnies. Okay. Mais avant cela, j'aimerais demander à Julio. Julio, tout à l'heure, tu as parlé du petit exemple. Okay, you spoke about one of your first investments, which was Kirogen, a company that I'm very well aware of, a company that we actually trying to pitch to some investor back a couple of years ago. And all of us can probably we understand the value of such a company that's a great product. We can see the story of Marvel or even DC when it comes to launching a product that can last and go years and years and create revenue throughout the years and course and decade, and get to the point that we have a movie that can technically create $1 billion revenue. So my question to Julio is, why do you think companies in the creative industry are not able to really realize that value, and what do you think can be done in terms of helping them even realizing more value so they can be more attractive to investors?
Okay, thank you. I'm very I do agree with everyone so far. What Ojoma and Ouafa said about the investor, how the investor are not ready to invest in this industry because we don't know well this industry, where we don't really know the rule of this industry. And I'd like to add that in this industry, the actors, the promoters, the entrepreneurs have to, as they are in need of this money, they have to understand what an investor want to know, what an investor want to see, because it's something we as an investor, we have the money, and we are looking for the best opportunities to invest in, and these entrepreneurs are waiting for this money, and they have to be ready, and there's so much to do about the investment readiness, like Ouafa said. What at Africreative, at INP, there's something that we do. We mentor. There's mentorship with the entrepreneurs, and which is very difficult because, as we all said, we are investors, they are creators, and we have different feeling about things. Sorry?
Different need. Vous avez des besoins différents.
Yes, exactly. And but this mentorship help them to understand that, like someone said earlier, they need to at a moment to be profitable. They need to be business minded. They need to think as business and not only as people waiting after grants and help from government. And that, to me, that's what we need to do, is to work alongside these entrepreneurs to understand our needs, what we want, and so they can turn some little things, because it's little things. The main things is the business. The business, if they're able to create nice video games, this is the big thing. This is the big apple. But they just need to have a proper structure, to be formal, to be able to say, okay, we're gonna be profitable if we sell 2,000 games, for example, and this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to mentorship them, and so they can go forward.
Fantastic. So we clearly see that, of course, there's a need to help creative business become a bit more commercial, in terms of think more about, of course, having a proper business structure, and thinking more about becoming profitable and actually bringing on revenue and bringing value to the investors. So which brings me to Leo, and in terms of what can the creative industry learn from the tech company, of course, the tech sector that you understand pretty well, and what can I actually learn, and what are the key points they need to focus on in order to be able to attract the type of investment that the tech company does attract?
Okay, thanks, Marshall, for this question. So on my answer, I'm going to touch base on some of the points that have been mentioned by Ouafa, especially Trésor, but also Julio. So I will start by saying, so the investors that invest in Africa, you have lots of kinds of investors that invest in the continent. But I would say, at least on the tech side, you have two main ones. You have the investors that invest for profit, and you have the investors that invest for impact. So the investors that we see, that we deal with most of the time, I'm talking about an Africarena experience, but also from my previous experience as a VC, is that when an investor is looking at a startup, they want to see, let's say the investor that invests for profit. The investors that invest for profit in a startup, what that investor wants to see is positive cash flow in the next years. Also, they want to see a startup that has a product that is scalable. So let's say that you're an investor looking at a startup in South Africa. You want to look at a company who has a product that can scale from South Africa to Nigeria to Kenya, and then maybe after to Europe or to the US. So you're really looking at we are really talking about the scalability of the product or of the service, because most of the time we're talking about service. So we're really looking about the scalability. So that's one of the points. scalability. Then also, one of the main point is the addressable market. So in the creative industry, as well as in the tech space, when an investor is going to look as an investment opportunity, she or he is going to look to the market that the company may address now, but may address in 1, 2, or 3 years. Because you must keep in mind that most of the time when an investor is getting on board, it is for the long run. It's like a 2 to 7 years investment. So the investor wants to see positive cash flow in the future, and they also want to see a business that has a real growth potential. So that's my second point. And then just 2 more points, but also, and that's the thing, the lack of investment readiness. So you were talking about data. That is a very good point. But also all of these businesses in the creative industry, they also must understand what is behind the investor mind. How is the investor thinking? What is the due diligence process? What is the investor going to look for? So data, but it's going to also be looking at lots of other points, financials, it's going to be looking at the team, etc. So that's my third point, I would say, lack of investment readiness, or to be sure that you are investment ready when you approach investor. Because also you cannot, when you're marketing yourself, you cannot go to all of the investors and not being ready. Otherwise, you're going to put yourself a bad reputation, and it's going to be trickier for you to raise in the future. And then touching base on my fourth and last point for this one, but so that's touching base on what you were saying, Trésor, regarding the wax. So that's a good example, but that's also for me a good counter example of what we are seeing in tech. Because most of the investors in tech, they are looking for startup with low tangible assets, all right? More about software than hardware. The thing with wax is you need factories, you need manufacturing plants, you need people. If you want to grow your business, if an investor is looking at a wax business and he wants to see this business growing in the future, necessarily it means that it will have to employ more human resources. And employing more human resources is a good thing, for sure. I am for that. Obviously, I mean, you just look at the unemployment rates all over the continent. You need to employ more human resources. But an investor is not going to look for that. The investor is going to look to grow the business while keeping the tangible assets and the human resources low. So they are going to look for businesses with low hardware, but software. So that's also one of the points that the investor would be looking at. So that was my 4 main points, I would say, that an investor would be looking at in the tech business, and that you can also, I think, apply to the creative sector.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Leo. And I mean, I get a very interesting point that you mentioned in regards to, of course, the comment that Trésor made, which is low headcounts, which is one of the key factors, the key points in the tech sector. How can you create, in order to attract big money, you need to show the investor that you're able to, of course, to create big revenue with a low headcount, and of course, to show that you can be profitable at a scalable space. So, which is something that I actually want to ask Ojoma. Do you add the criteria that you guys look at? Of course, those are tech criteria, but do you guys approach investment in creative industry with the same criteria in terms of scalability and, of course, profit margin? Do you guys approach investment with the same criteria, or do you guys use different criteria when it comes to driving investment?
So the earlier speaker was talking about investors investing for income and impact. And our approach for funding is more through the impact lens. And when we think about impact, obviously there's economic impact, but the economic impact is not so much benefit back to the British Council. It's more profits back to the entrepreneur, which means that they can grow their business, they can employ themselves and employ other people and lead to economic growth. So what we tend to look at more when we support enterprises and organizations is what the sort of multiplier effect of supporting that business will be. So a really good example is we've worked with a fashion organization in Nigeria for the last 2 or so years. It's called the Assembly Hub. And as the name implies, they're a hub of fashion entrepreneurs. And so we like that kind of organization because if the assembly succeeds, it means that the whole network of fashion entrepreneurs that they're supporting will get better support from the assembly. So we tend to look at it through that lens of impact. We're also really interested in sort of individuals. So whether that's individual founders or individual managers, because they're so critical to the outcomes that the organizations that they're leading have. And so we like to see strong track record. We like to see strong personal credibility. We like to see strong personal commitment. And so we also look at that quite a lot. The numbers only coming insofar as the point I was making is, if we invest in this organization, do they have the sort of financial knowledge, experience, capacity that they need that will allow them to grow to achieve the impact that we're looking for? So that's how it tends to work.
So you guys are more impact investors, which is kind of bring me to my next question. But before I jump to the next question, I want to get a Ouafa opinion on that. So Ouafa, would you say that investors in your portfolio are they more profitable investors or impact investors? How would you describe your portfolio of investors or the entity that you deal with?
Actually, I have a different understanding of this. It's very simplified. The situation in our continent is much more complex than putting the whole investor in 2 simple categories. But also we need to all together here in this discussion be clear about what do we mean by investment. For example, at CFW, for us, we talk about resources, whether they are from as a loan or investment, whether they are grants, whether they come from sponsorship, whether we consider even technical assistance as a resource, as an investment. Actually, it's converting money. I can give an example. Some banks or some development agencies offer up, for example, in Tunisia, up to 10,000 euro on technical assistance to small enterprises, regardless of the sector. What does that mean? That means you have up to 10,000 euro that this bank gives to pay experts that do things you need. For example, if I need to develop a platform for my business that costs 10,000 euros, I go to this technical assistance program, give them the TURs, and they manage everything and they pay for it. So that's a type of investment. And I think as a sector, we need really to widen what we understand by investment. Why? Because one thing that makes effectiveness of the investment in its larger sense, as we as CFW understand it, it's the lack of coordination. Like, we don't have a clear understanding in our investments ecosystems in our countries. Very few people or organizations do this level so that the investments are smart. Why? Like, take in Tunisia. Right after the revolution, there is a huge flow of resources put in the country in different sectors, of which the culture creative sector could take advantage. Some have specifically targeting the development of the culture creative sector. Others are job creation related. So sometimes you can find investment that you're not really looking to invest. For example, in the context of Tunisia, someone right after the revolution, it was just great jobs, calm people, keep the situation out from exploding, you know, keep contain the unemployment, a crazy increase. So, but the result is the money is all over the place. There is no coordination where we could look and say, okay, there is money going there in, I don't know, startups, for example. I sit as the vice president of Tunisian Startup Association. There is a lot of investment in the startup phase, very little in the acceleration. So there is like a discrepancy and disequilibre between the needs and where the investments are put. And there bring us to where our countries and government, our approach in investment strategies. because the situation in most of the continent country is different from developed, let's say, between bracket countries, where you don't have this huge flow of investors like as a development agencies, aid programs, all those things. So our government, if we have a very smart, what we call, this is what we advocate for as CFW, is a smart, sustainable, transparent investment strategies for the cultural creative sector. And that happens when our government becomes smart and saying, okay, let's look, what are the needs and where are the different investments? And then I fill those gaps. So what we lack, if we are smart in our country, the investment strategy should look at the structural ecosystem investment. This is what we lack. That means that the investment that look at structuring the ecosystems. For example, if we say in our country, we need these data. From our cultural creative development policy and strategy should put their little money, what we have from our government there. There is the gap. I fund this because funding a film, a production, there are many other plays. British Council, Goethe Institute, French is l'IFT, la Francophonie, there is a lot. But none of them will be very interested in financing mapping studies, very few, let's say, to be correct. But structural investment are the responsibility of our government, are the responsibility of our local investors. I stop there because if I speak, I will speak an hour.
This is a very interesting point that you actually mentioned, because this comes back to the previous panel, and we're talking about funding and who was supposed to fund, especially when it comes to infrastructure. It is clear that in order for the businesses to have access to the right resources, which is the term that you use, there must be an infrastructure in place. And once again, the question is, who's in charge of building or funding that particular infrastructure? So said so, I want to come back to Trésor. Trésor, what do you think are your experience in terms of your investors in your platform? Are they more into, you said before, of course, they're more interested in developing on the long term, but do you think that will be more willing to invest on infrastructure development when in terms of building infrastructure for the creative industry, or into direct projects? So what has been your experience so far? What have you seen on your platform, on your data so far?
Alors, étant donné que nous sommes plus sur des investisseurs basés sur l'impact, les deux types vont nous intéresser, parce que l'un est nécessaire à l'autre. On a besoin de structures pour pouvoir aider certaines startups qui sont justement sur des projets basés sur des produits, pour les aider à scaler, à être capable de reproduire. Alors vraiment pour démocratiser le mot scaler, c'est être capable de reproduire à l'échelle, à grande échelle, ce qu'on est capable de faire à toute petite échelle. Donc si aujourd'hui on est capable de produire 10 à 100 produits, j'ai en tête une superbe startup qui fait des produits cosmétiques à base de produits frais locaux, basé au Congo ou au Nigeria, je ne sais plus, mais à retrouver facilement sur Internet, l'aider aujourd'hui à passer de 100 pots par jour à 10 000 pots pour pouvoir justement déployer sur le continent. Ça, ce sont aujourd'hui des projets d'investissement pour nos investisseurs. Pour autant, ils sont tout autant intéressés à aider cette jeune femme qui a lancé son projet, qui s'est dit, aujourd'hui chez moi, il y a des produits qui sont bio, qui sont locaux, c'est aussi le standard africain. On a quand même la chance de manger des produits qui sont de chez nous, qui sont produits, on est capable de les localiser, on a vraiment de la chance. On n'est pas dans la surconsommation en plus. Aider une productrice comme celle-là qui va aujourd'hui produire ses produits et qui fait elle-même sa communication sur Instagram et qui cartonne. C'est-à-dire que de chez elle, elle arrive à vendre en Europe aussi. Je trouve ça génial. Et la même énergie, le même sourire que je vous partage aujourd'hui, c'est la même chose qu'on partage à nos investisseurs. Donc, pour répondre très simplement à tes questions, les deux, avec autant d'intérêt l'un pour l'autre, parce que c'est ce qui donne du sens à l'investissement dans l'industrie créative. Il faut voir très long terme et il faut voir ça comme un investissement qui est structurel. Donc, soit on veut agir sur l'impact, et donc on va être capable de se dire on est sur des profits qui sont minimisés mais qui viendront dans la durée. Être capable d'investir sur Kiro aujourd'hui, comme l'a fait Julio, et comme je l'ai fait moi-même, c'est parce qu'on est fan et de manga, de comics, de jeux vidéo, et que quand on regarde l'Afrique, on voit à l'échelle de 2025 à peu près 1,5 milliard de jeunes qui arrivent. C'est clair qu'on ne va pas forcément regarder tout le temps du Marvel. Il est clair qu'on ne va pas toujours jouer à des jeux e-sport. On peut faire ça à la maison. Donc aujourd'hui, en mettant peut-être 500, 1000, 10 000 $, on est sûr que demain, on verra le e-sport africain arriver. C'est ce qui convainc aujourd'hui nos investisseurs d'aller de l'avant, autant sur les produits que sur du structurel.
Fantastique, fantastique. Très bonne réponse que j'aime beaucoup. Évidemment, la vision, il faut avoir, we must have that vision on the short and long term, I think, to really solve the different issue. And once again, I think we can all agree that when it comes to creative industry, it's very hard to differentiate either profit or for impact. I guess not all the money is welcome, which is not always the case when it comes to tech, as you will probably comment later on. So I'm going to jump next to Julio. And of course, j'aimerais savoir, Julio, par rapport aux investisseurs, en fait, vous êtes plus dans le pour profit ou pour impact. Et dans ce cas aussi, j'aimerais savoir quels sont les projets, évidemment, qui sont les plus rentables. Évidemment, c'est pour profit, mais quels sont les projets qui sont les plus valués, which are given the more value by the investors that you guys have on board? So, Julio, that's the question for you.
Okay, thank you. INP, we said that we are an impact. We do impact investing, so we see ourselves like as impact investors. But we, as everyone, we can't unlink impact and the need of profitability, and because we need to do the best investment possible. What about your question? Can you repeat the question, please?
What are your investors? Of course, now you just mentioned that you guys are more into impact.
Yes.
So I suppose with that question, you can answer my question, which is you guys value more impact than for profit, but at the same time, you need to return profit to your investors. So what would be...
Yes, yeah. I have a really simple answer. We received a few weeks ago a really nice project, a great project, but the project wasn't funded by an African, and the promoter were living abroad. When I say abroad, he wasn't living in in Africa. He was in Europe. So we decided to not continue to not invest, because even if there's a very great project in front of us, we do not want to remove the way we want to do business. And like I said, we are an impact investor. We want impact within the people. We want people to create formal jobs. We want them to give. We want promoters to give insurance to their workers. We want them to pay taxes, because we were talking about government, but government need taxes for the schools, infrastructure, and everything. So yes, what we look, the first thing we look at is the business. If it's like Leo said earlier, if it's a scalable business, if we understand the business, if there's people willing to pay for the product or the service. But we can continue the discussion only if we see that there's no it's not it's in the same way we want to do business. So if like I said, the companies, the promoters are African, and if they're not originally from an African country, but they live in Africa, they want to create value in Africa, and this is something really important to us. And it's not only this is not lies because, like I said a few weeks ago, we really decided to not invest in the company because of that.
All right. So, c'est d'abord l'impact, après le profit. Okay. This is first impact and of course profit next. All right. Leo, I mean, you kind of find yourself on your own there, pure for profit, but I guess that makes sense. You know, you guys are more into tech. And I just want, of course, I would like you to give us more data in terms of course, what type of investment we see in the ICT area, especially the ICT that falls within the creative, and how we can, maybe that will help us see what type of investment we can get into the creative once, of course, we readapt the model. So what are the data? What's the data telling us in terms of investment in the ICT sector in Africa so far?
Okay, thanks, Marshall, for the question. Just before answering it, I'm just going to touch base quickly on a few points. So firstly, I really appreciate your contributions. I support 100% what you said. So big thumb up. But then also what I would like to say is, so yes, there is profit, yes, there is impact, but it's not completely different. I mean, you can also invest in startups that have an impact, but that also for profit. Actually, many of the startups in Africa, the ones that succeed, they are succeeding because they are solving African problems and because they have impact. So to give you an example, for example, is all the investment in the fintech space. Everyone here knows that lots of people in sub-Saharan Africa are unbanked. So actually the World Health Organizations, the World Bank released a report like last year or 2 years ago, and actually 66% of the people in sub-Saharan are unbanked. So you have lots of investment in the fintech space. And most of these fintechs, their goal is to actually accelerate the financial inclusion, is to bring people in the formal economy, is to bring people in the formal financial sector for them to be able to have access to correct interest price loan, is to have access to bank account, etc. So you have lots of startups that, yes, they receive funding because the investors, they saw profit in it, but at the end of the day, these startups are here to have a real impact. Here, in that case, the financial inclusion. But you have lots of different startups that are for profit, but that have an impact. So you can also, you don't always have to separate both of them. So when it comes to the numbers, actually, so here we are more going to be talking about the investment that would have been received by startups in the ICT space. So what I can tell you is so the thing is, you have lots of reports that have been released last year regarding how much investment has been received by startups in Africa. The first report from Disrupt Africa says that startups have received $500 million last year. And if you take a report from Partech, it teaches us that startups have received $2 billion. So you have lots of different numbers. It's because of the different methodologies, and it's also because it is complicated to actually get good data and do a really accurate mapping. So what I can tell you regarding the investment received in the ICT startups were the ones that could actually overlap with the startups in the creative industry space. So basically last year they received around 16% of the total investment. So if you base yourself on the Partech report, is a bit more than $320 million in high augmentations compared to the previous year. So previously, I think you were talking about startup in the SaaS sector, right? Tell me if I'm mistaken. Yeah. So when it comes to the SaaS sector, it's actually the startups that are leading the way, and they actually receive most of the money. So the thing is where we want to be careful here is we really want to understand where actually the investment in tech may overlap some investment in the startups that are operating in the creative industry. So as far as I know, there is not really exhaustive mapping for this sector. I think it actually could be really relevant to do a mapping. But the thing is, for that, we need to have the thing is, the ecosystem is still very fragmented. So we need to have more networks, and we need to have a less fragmented ecosystem to really understand and tackle the issues to improve and enhance the investment received by the startups.
All right, fantastic. Thank you very much for the insight. SaaS is doing pretty good, and SaaS actually one of the big sector here, even here in the UK and the rest of the world, the rest of the Western world. So the other question that you guys, of course, you all mentioned this point, which is how do we actually recognize the value so we can quantify that value and therefore drive investment to that particular company that's creating the value. So I'd like to get your insight on what you guys think is the value of IP, because as we probably discussed earlier on, IP plays a major role in the creative industry. IP is where the value resides within a creative businesses. So how do you guys value, or how much do you guys value IP when it comes to driving investment and driving funding to a particular company? So this time I would start with Ouafa. In terms of when you're looking at raising resources for a company, how much do you value IP in terms of selling that company to your funders and your investors?
I mean, actually, it's one of the first things we look at before outside. I mean, we have with CFW, we have developed a tool to develop this resource mobilization strategy. And that tool is called the SAP, and the SAP stands for Savoir, Avoir et Produire. And the Savoir, it's about the core competencies, but le P, which is produire, it's about avoir. And avoir, it's about to have. It's about what resources you already, it's your internal resources. And the IP, it's one of those resources that they have. It's already there. You just need to collect it before going and asking for money outside. Let's maximize and use what you can yourself generate and you have entitled to. So these are one of the first things that when we develop a resource mobilization strategy for our clients, is that, okay, you have those rights. Are you following that? How's the system in your country? How can you access your IP's incomes and copyrights incomes? And that's one of the major resources. It has been mentioned actually earlier in the first panel, this 1% sur la copie privée. A second success example is Tunisia, who just voted for that a few months ago. So that rule, it has been pushed by the new Minister of Culture, and it has been put in place. So yes, IP is fundamental. I mean, I think it's the debate in the continent is not anymore about how relevant and how important the debate is how we organize and make the most of it and make it functional. I think there is a consensus that it's important. Now, again, that brings us back to the smart investment policies. Then, you know, in the ecosystem, if you go to a donor or an investor and you say, I wanted to put in place a company that collect and help or advocate or work on how we can improve whether the legal context and do advocacy work and follow these kind of things, nobody. Basically, like maybe your chances are like 5% chances to the interest an investor or a donor to do that work. So then and that's how it worked in Tunisia. It was a government-led action. It didn't come from it. It could come, so could be financing those kind of initiatives.
Great stuff. Thank you very much for your insight. Ojoma, so do you guys value IP when it comes to creative businesses, or do you guys, of course, as you mentioned, is it something that you guys consider or that you guys value a lot in terms of portfolio and investment?
So yeah, we consider it in terms of the sort of competencies that the businesses and entrepreneurs we support have. I suppose there's a maybe bigger interest that we have in IPs in terms of policy. As Ouafa was saying just now, is, you know, if that enabling environment for intellectual property protection doesn't exist, then it makes it very difficult for the individual businesses and enterprises to actually monetize and leverage that IP to grow and to sort of get in revenue and strengthen their businesses. And so we do a lot of policy work around the IP space, whether that's technical assistance to government agencies or think tanks or various people working in that IP space. We do quite a lot of TA in that respect, just so we can support the development of the thinking on the policy side for IP.
Fantastic, thank you. And I'll follow with Trésor. L'API, propriété intellectuelle. Est-ce que c'est quelque chose que vous trouvez de value dans votre portfolio? C'est quelque chose que vous regardez à l'heure d'investir dans une compagnie ou à l'heure de vendre un projet à vos investisseurs? C'est quelque chose que vous prenez en considération?
La propriété intellectuelle, non. Aujourd'hui, non, pas encore. Au contraire, on est sur une recherche de porteurs de projets qui savent marcher mais qui veulent apprendre à courir. On est également sur des porteurs de projets qui veulent apprendre à marcher. On a vu la débrouille dont on parlait tout à l'heure pour pouvoir devenir quelque chose. Mais c'est très difficile sur un continent où il n'y a pas de législation. Alors là, on est clairement en train de faire le pont entre le groupe 1 et le groupe 2 au niveau des interventions. Il nous manque un cadre légal pour pouvoir protéger nos champions, comme j'ai envie de les appeler, comme je les appelle couramment. Donc, on en tenir compte aujourd'hui. Voilà. Tout ce qui dépend des gouvernements, moi, j'ai décidé au nom de la société d'en faire abstraction. Comme disait Ouafa tout à l'heure, on peut aller chercher des aides un peu partout, de toute manière, de mauvais endroits, gérés par des personnes qui parfois, voire souvent, alors je sais que c'est mis sur l'île de France, ce que je dis, mais n'y connaissent pas grand-chose. Il faut voir des millions de francs CFA ou des millions d'euros mis à disposition pour pouvoir recruter parfois quelques centaines de personnes. On dit, mais c'est n'importe quoi. Aujourd'hui, on a besoin de ces sous-là à d'autres endroits qui sont stratégiques. Donc, sur ce point-là, je rejoins parfaitement Ouafa. Donc, on a pour tous ceux qui sont sur le continent ou pour ceux qui ont une vision claire du continent, on a une grosse lacune aujourd'hui sur ce que le gouvernement peut faire, devrait faire et fera dans le futur. Donc, non, aujourd'hui, pour nos investisseurs, on n'en tient pas du tout compte. On va miser sur la débrouillardise et on va miser sur à la fois leur futur potentiel avec des choses très concrètes, mais aussi leur capacité, et là je vais finir pour ne pas faire trop de digression, mais créer une équipe qui a vraiment du sens. Les gens qui sont associés avec des gens qui sont plus compétents qu'eux. Voilà. J'aime les artisans qui sont capables de s'associer avec des gens qui sont purement commerciaux et qui vivent pour la vente. Ça, je trouve ça génial. Et ça, c'est une équipe où j'ai envie de miser parce qu'ils sont complémentaires et qu'ils iront loin. Ils ont été capables de mettre, on va dire, la moitié de leur ego de côté pour pouvoir aller chercher du profit. Ça, c'est génial.
Ah, parfait. Et pourtant, ça revient à un point que tu as levé tout à l'heure, c'est par rapport à la création de valeur et comment protéger ces valeurs pour pouvoir aider la compagnie à grandir et à être plus profitable dans le futur, en fait. Et c'est pour ça que je vais d'ailleurs m'adresser à Julio. Julio, est-ce que c'est quelque chose que vous considérez, la propriété intellectuelle dans le monde créatif? Si on est tous d'accord que la propriété intellectuelle représente la valeur créée et qu'on pense de vraiment créer une valeur au long terme, il faut savoir la protéger. Est-ce que c'est quelque chose que vous prenez en considération quand vous faites vos investissements? Est-ce que c'est quelque chose que vous advise vos startups, que vous les conseillez dessus? Comment gérez-vous ce point? Julio.
Oui, merci Martial. Sur ce point, c'est compliqué. Je suis du même avis que Trésor. C'est compliqué parce que quand bien même c'est important et quand bien même on souhaiterait que ce soit parfaitement valorisé. Est-ce qu'il y a des protections autour pour ce qu'ils ont mis en place? Par exemple, un sujet que l'on a sur la musique. Les artistes font de la musique, donc par rapport aux industries créatives, donc ils font de la musique. Leur musique passe en radio. Donc ils ont la propriété, c'est leur musique. Mais est-ce qu'ils se font payer par rapport à ça? La réponse est très peu. En Afrique, hein, je parle. Donc du coup, non, c'est pas le sujet premier pour le moment, mais parce que ça nous dépasse, c'est pas forcément de notre ressort ou c'est pas toujours du ressort du promoteur.
Ah, très intéressant, réponse. Ça nous dépasse. J'aime cette expression. C'est une expression très africaine qu'on a. Ça nous dépasse, donc voilà, on va pas forcément gérer avec. Léo.
Si tu me permets, Martial,
ouais, vas-y.
Si tu me permets, sur la propriété intellectuelle, quand tout à l'heure je parlais de valeur et de code, je crois qu'on touche clairement du doigt quelque chose qui est dans l'appropriation ou parfois dans l'ethnocentrisme. La propriété intellectuelle, c'est quelque chose qui a du sens aujourd'hui quand on est en Europe ou quand on est en Afrique, parce qu'on a peur de la contrefaçon et parce qu'on accorde peut-être beaucoup d'idées à l'exécution. En Afrique, c'est l'inverse. Et naturellement, nous le savons. Nous le savons. Nous savons que finalement, un artiste aujourd'hui peut laisser des paroles d'une chanson, pas de Wiz Khalifa, tout comme il n'y a pas eu de Akon. Et miser sur Akon en oubliant justement la propriété intellectuelle, c'est apporter aujourd'hui un des mécènes qui est en passe d'électrifier une grosse partie du continent. Donc, c'est important, c'est vrai, mais il est important aussi pour nous d'apprendre à finalement couper le cordon avec certaines bases que nous avons de par ce que nous vivons au quotidien et qui fonctionnent. Hein. Il y a des choses qui fonctionnent très bien et on n'est pas là pour réapprendre l'art de l'investissement à Warren Buffett. On est d'accord. Mais la propriété intellectuelle aujourd'hui sur le continent africain, c'est le cadet de ses soucis. Voilà. On doit aujourd'hui apprendre à valoriser ce qu'on sait faire et apprendre à utiliser et à maximiser l'utilisation du digital qui est gratuit et qui est à disposition de tout le monde. Voilà.
C'est très intéressant que tu dis ça parce que le panel tout à l'heure, il parlait évidemment de l'importance de la propriété intellectuelle pour avoir cette valeur en retour, spécialement pour les compagnies qui sont dans la musique. L'un de nos panélistes tout à l'heure, Wiseman, qui était représentant d'une compagnie de collection de royalties, il disait comment l'Afrique du Sud, comme pays, était capable de vraiment rendre de la valeur aux artistes parce qu'il était capable de collecter les royalties de la musique, évidemment. Mais ce qui est intéressant, c'est un truc très, très intéressant. We could have had a long discussion on how important it is, but as we grow et le monde devient de plus en plus digital et l'Afrique se digitalise de plus en plus, je pense vraiment que c'est un côté qui est très important et surtout à l'heure de drive investment. Et on en a parlé tout à l'heure de la possibilité d'utiliser la propriété intellectuelle comme un collatéral qui peut remettre which can bring a bit more peace of mind to investors when it comes to creative sectors. And that's why I'm going to actually ask Leo, how do you guys view IP when it comes to, of course, investing in your sector? How well is considered IP? How important is IP for you guys? Just to touch before the last question, yes.
So in one word, fundamental. So IP is really crucial, literally. In tech startups, IP is extremely important and must be protected by any ways. So tech startups are known for their very low tangible asset, as I said earlier. And actually a substantial part of the value in early stage startups lies in the IP that the startup generates. So it is crucial for startups and their investors to secure that IP. So for that, you all know here, but you have different ways. You can register copyright, trademarks, patents. You need to be sure that your contributors within the company, but also the contractors and consultants must assign their IP to the company, and that IP needs to be protected. So you want to be careful about hiring new employees, especially the ones that maybe come from the competitor. You want to sign an NDA when talking to some investors or talking to some clients as well. But also, of course, you need to keep that cost effective. It cannot be a big chunk of your budget, but you need to be careful about your IP, protect it, develop it. It is very, very valuable, and this is what investors are going to be looking at, and this is what potential buyers in a later stage of the startup are going to be looking at as well. So yeah, IP is very important in the tech space.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Leo. We're kind of running out of time, guys. I'll just have enough time for a last question, I believe. I'll just double check with Raul on the chat. So the last question is a surprise question, and I'm going to start with Ouafa. So what is the particular offer that you guys have right now, Ouafa, on your side, or you guys are offering, or you guys have on the table for creative businesses in Africa?
Sorry, can you say it again? You were speaking too fast.
What's the special offer that you and your team and your business, you guys have for the creative on the continent right now?
The special offer we're giving right now, you mean, to the country?
Yes, what's the special offer? What's special today?
What we're doing special today is very soon you're going to open our, I think it's going to be the biggest investor and donor database for cultural creative sector. It's going to be online. I think it's one of the, I think we have more than 1,000 and something entries. And you can search, like it's, when you look for resource mobilization and investment for the sector, as I said, there is no one-stop shop when you find the information. So it's too much time consuming. And even the little data available, it's not easy. It's not designed in a manner that helps you very quickly identify who are the potential investors for you. So you can do your investment strategy. So our database allows you to search with more than 15 criteria. You go to the point by your legal status, by if it requires co-financing or not, type of resource, type of investor, is it institutional, investments, type of, so that's one special very soon to do. And our standard offer is we do this consultancy, we offer the sustainability partnership. So the sustainability partnership is a package where we basically take 50% of the risk on resource and investment raising for our client. So actually we only get paid when we secure resources for our client. And we work on the objective of total transfer of skills. So this sustainability partnership goes over 1.5 to 2 years. And our aim is to create make our client financially strong, to have the skills in-house. And we transfer those knowledge we have to them after a certain time.
All right, great stuff. So you did say it's 15% of the resources, yeah?
Sorry?
15% of the resource, 15%.
Yes. No. We don't take 15%. Actually, we take 50% of the risk, meaning we only get paid when the money is secured. You could develop the project, the proposal, the pitch, we do the whole work, that it's not successful. We don't ask our partner to pay. We take the risk with them.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. This is actually very nice.
Sustainability partnership.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Nice of her. Okay, Ojoma, what do you have for our creative that are watching right now? What type of offer do you have for them?
So quite a few things. With COVID and social distancing, we've moved a lot of our content online and to sort of broadcast channels. And so we're still offering lots of webinars, training, opportunities to connect online. In fact, we have a webinar tomorrow for how to get into the gaming industry. And so we've got speakers from the UK, from Senegal, from Nigeria, for young people who are looking to get into the gaming industry. So we have that ongoing program of offers. We also have grant programs that we offer periodically. All of that information is typically on our website. If people just Google British Council Sub-Saharan Africa, we have a Sub-Saharan Africa Arts British Council page where we put all our opportunities, whether it's for training, funding, study tours to the UK when we could travel, or the different opportunities that we have. So that is ongoing.
Great stuff. Thank you. Trésor, what's the deal? C'est quoi le deal? C'est quoi l'offre de ton côté?
Écoute, l'offre, elle est assez majeure. La nouvelle plateforme sort cet hiver. Donc, très simplement, si aujourd'hui, en face de cette vidéo, il y a quelqu'un qui est créatif, qui porte un projet ou qui mène à bout aujourd'hui, à bout de bras, un projet et qui a envie d'éclater, d'exploser ou simplement de se matérialiser, il pourra s'inscrire gratuitement sur la plateforme pendant à peu près 1 mois cette fin d'année. Tout ce qu'il a à faire, c'est envoyer à Africa Colors une petite vidéo de présentation ou simplement un mail et on lui donnera la visibilité qu'il y aura envers nos investisseurs. On a déjà les investisseurs. Ce qui nous manque, c'est des rêveurs, c'est des champions et c'est des gens qui ont envie. Mais par contre, uniquement des personnes du continent. Je rejoins Julio. Ah, je t'entends plus. Pourquoi je ne t'entends plus?
Merci pour le deal. Je crois que déjà, je connais quelques compagnies qui seront très intéressées parce que vous êtes en train d'offrir, donc on parlera plus tard.
Okay.
On parlera plus tard. Vidéo. Alors, c'est quoi le deal de ton côté?
De mon côté, il y a plusieurs choses. Premièrement, ceux qui sont sur une partie très en amont, qui sont encore assez loin des sujets business. J'ai mis le lien de Afrique Créative. Donc, ils peuvent se connecter, contacter les différentes personnes et voir s'ils peuvent se faire aider, accompagner, notamment sur la prochaine cohorte qui sera lancée. Sur la partie financement, si des entrepreneurs, des promoteurs se sentent prêts à aller auprès des investisseurs, moi je regarde les dossiers, les dossiers digitaux. Donc si c'est des jeux vidéo, une application X ou Y, ou je ne sais pas si c'est tech, ils peuvent me contacter directement sur mon LinkedIn, et puis après on échangera très facilement, très rapidement.
Fantastique, ça c'est beaucoup direct, merci beaucoup. Léo, depuis l'Afrique du Sud, tout au sud, alors c'est quoi le deal? What's the deal? What you guys have on offer right now?
Sorry guys, I was muted. So what I can give as an advice for the different entrepreneurs in that sector, from an Africarena point of view, and actually from where I am, I can see all the different networks, at least in tech, but I can see all of the different networks, initiatives, and bridges that may have been created by the different tech hubs. I'm thinking of the incubators, the accelerators, etc. So my advice would be to really tell the entrepreneurs to look at the different initiatives that are around them, to support them, to give them visibility, to give them funding, grant funding, equity investment, doesn't really matter, but to give them resources, basically, to give them resources. So I would really advise and strongly advise you have a growing numbers of tech hubs around the continent ready to help entrepreneurs. Doesn't matter their verticals, health tech, fintech, but also entrepreneurs from the creative industry. So you have lots of structures that are available out there, ready to give free resources, ready to give free time. So I would strongly suggest entrepreneurs to look at these different structures, to look at the different initiatives, and to not be afraid to really reach to even a tech incubator or a tech accelerator in another country, and just ask for advice, ask for help. You see how it is when you speak to people in the ecosystem. Everyone is super friendly. It's not like you're dealing with people in Europe or in the US. I have nothing against people working there, obviously, but you see here it's very different. You can just reach out on LinkedIn or reach out by email, and most of the time you will get an answer, you will get a response. So entrepreneurs, do not hesitate to really reach to those people, reach to those infrastructure. So maybe you're not going to reach to the good people the first time, but that person may lead you to the other person who is going to enable growth in your business, for example. Yeah, really look at the different initiatives and different structures that are here in the market ready to help.
All right, thank you very much, Leo, for that last comment. Ladies and gentlemen, it was a pleasure having you today. Thank you for making the time. Merci beaucoup pour avoir fait le temps de pouvoir participer dans cette conversation pour l'industrie créative et pour l'investissement en Afrique. Once again, thank you for your time, and please do share the details. We'll probably get in touch and follow up with some of you guys. We have many projects that I'm sure some of you will love to present to your founders, and of course to your network as well. So I'm sure we'll have the opportunity to talk and of course and do some more business to help the industry really grow and glow in Africa and help create some more jobs. Mesdames, messieurs, merci beaucoup, merci pour le temps. Ouafa, plaisir. Sur ce, nous allons terminer cette vidéo. We're gonna close, and thank you guys for taking the time to join us today.
Merci beaucoup.
Sacha, say
Thanks,
goodbye.
Marshall. Thanks to the Bconsulting for having us. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.